Chapter 6. A Warning to Shilvurst. Gah! Piece of garbage! Thren put the tip of his left thumb into his mouth to try and soothe the throbbing pain. He looked back at the nail, and though it was now stuck in the wall, it bent to the left defiantly. Tossing his hammer on the ground, he picked up the last slice of bread he had been eating for lunch and ate it with a scowl. He looked back at the nail and asked, "Why? Why won't you just do as I ask?" The nail stood just as still as ever, ignoring the plea directed towards it. Thren sighed and sat down on the ground. He'd been working on patching a hole in the wall of his chicken coop all morning. Due to his shortage of good nails, he was forced to use some old rusty ones that had been laying in a pile outside his house for who knows how long. Taking his last bite, Thren scooped a nail off the ground and rose to his feet. "Now, you listen here. Are you talking to that nail?" Thren spun around, his heart jumping at the sudden voice behind him. His wife, Iriana, stood behind him, her hand over her mouth, trying to suppress a smile. No, of course I wasn't talking to the nail. I was just, it was..." Iriana laughed. "Oh, all right. I must be hearing things is all." She smiled and walked up to Thren, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "How's it coming along?" Thren looked back at the bent nail and almost thought he saw a malicious grin rusted into its side. It was going all right. But I've run out of good nails, and I'm having to use some of these old ones I found by the house, and they aren't cooperating with me." "Well, shame on them. Don't they know who you are?" Thren smiled. "Exactly. You'd think they'd show me more respect." Iriana laughed again. "Come on back to the house. Geode is here, and he says he has some questions for you." Thren's eyes widened, but Iriana quickly shut his thoughts down. "Don't worry. He assured me that Silas is doing fine. He says they just forgot to mention a few details is all." Thren's hands began to sweat. "Why would Geode be here and need to talk to me if nothing has happened? Surely that can't be the case." Masking his worry, Thren agreed and took Iriana's hand. "Let's go see what's going on then." As he and Iriana approached the house, he saw Geode sitting with his eyes closed on the front steps. "I found him, Geode," Iriana called to him. "He was working with some rebel nails." Iriana released his hand, letting out an anxious breath. A look of worry crossed her face, but her trust beat out her worry as she turned towards the house. "I need to finish hanging out the clothes. I'll be just around back if you need me." Geode thanked her and gestured that they should go inside. Leading the way into the house, Thren's mind spun with possibilities of horrible things that could have happened to his son and the others. Anger and sadness wrestled inside of him, combated by a small sliver of hope that Geode did indeed tell the truth to Iriana and that they were all still okay. Subconsciously, he led Geode into Silas's room and shut the door. Pulling up a chair and bracing himself for the worst, he cleared his voice. "What's this all about, Geode? You wouldn't be here if you'd just forgotten to tell me something. What happened? Is Silas all right?" "Yes, Thren. Silas is fine, I promise. We ran into a bit of trouble near the river. Some bandits working for Melos. No one was hurt. Your boy did a mighty fine job of keeping himself safe. I hate to report so early that we've run into trouble, but you would know how dangerous it is out there, being part of Shilvurst's guard in past years." "Yes, but this soon? You've only just left. How could Melos possibly know what we're doing already?" "That's what I'm here to talk to you about. Has anything strange happened in Shilvurst since we've been gone?" Thren pondered for a moment, then shook his head. "Now that you mention it, there were some strange people that came the morning you left. I didn't think much of it at the time. Melos is always sending guards in and out. But these guys, they did have something different about them. They didn't stay long, though. They left that evening." Geode sat down on Silas's bed, his mind putting the pieces together. "The timing all lines up. It must have been the same group that attacked us." "But how would they know?" Geode sat motionless for a moment, his mind spinning. "It's just a theory, but I'm starting to think that there might be a connection between Melos and your son." Thren's heart stopped in his chest, his throat growing dry. "What do you mean?" "The Stone of Darkness. I think it might be the centerpiece. When Silas found it, he said he had a strange vision. It showed him things that he couldn't possibly know about by any other means. I'm guessing that the very moment that he had that vision, Melos was aware that the stone had been taken from its hiding place, so he sent some men to go and get it. They came here, the general location of where it was last hidden, While we were on the road, Silas tried to use magic, and must have accidentally tapped into that connection again. He saw another vision, which must have set off something so that Melos knew where we were. That's why his men left. They knew where we were. Then they found you by the river, Thren finished. Exactly. There has to be a connection of some kind. Darkness that has seeped from the stone into your son. Thren ran his fingers through his hair in frustration, his breathing growing heavier. He is in danger, then. All of you are. Melos knows exactly where you are and will keep sending his goons. Or worse, he'll come down himself and kill you all and take the stone. Geode stood from the bed, pacing back and forth across Silas's cold room. I think we still have a chance. I'm almost positive that he's only able to know where we are when Silas has those visions. I don't think he can tell where we are otherwise. So, if we take slightly obscure paths and figure out a way to stop Silas from having the visions, I don't think he'll be able to find us so easily. Also, I don't think we have to worry about himself coming to find us. At least, not yet. He's the kind of man that lets others do the dirty work for him, until he has no other option. By the time that happens, we'll be in Gellandor. We'll have the forces of nature on our side, and it will be too late for him. Geode stopped pacing, turning towards Thren. You haven't gotten any impression of an incoming invasion, have you? Thren looked up. What? Here in Shilverst? No, I don't think so. Why? Silas was convinced he saw Shilverst burning in the most recent vision he had, Geode said, starting his pacing back up again. I think it would be wise to start keeping watch. Perhaps round up others that used to be in the King's Guard to watch for signals of an invasion. I'd almost want them to come, Thren said, his voice low. Torn's father, Fenrin, feels the same way. We talk about it often. The guards here would hardly stand a chance if we rose up against them. The only problem is what would happen if Melos came down to put us back in our place. Thren shook himself, ideas of liberating the town fading from his mind. I'll keep an eye out. Tell a few people that were in the King's Guard about it, too. There's still a few of us left. We won't let them catch us by surprise. Good, Geode replied. For now, that's probably the best we can do. Maybe someday, though, Thren. I feel that someday soon you might get your wish. The thrill of battle started to rise once again in his mind, but he shut it down quickly. Was there anything else that you needed to tell me? No, just that we appreciate you letting your son come with us. It's crazy to put so much upon the shoulders of one so young, but I feel something special about him, Thren. I don't know what it is yet, but I really do feel it. Thren nodded, a tear of pride starting to form in his eye. He's a special guy, no doubt about it. Geode started for the door, turning back just before leaving Silas's room. Once we have our edge, we'll fight back, Thren. I promise you. Thren smiled. I'll hold you to it. No way I'd miss out on that fight. Samara's inner life flowed up her arms like a warm river. The tingling sensation filled her chest, then slowly entered her head. Nothing. She still felt nothing. Words of encouragement from both Uthrin and Silas filled her ears, but it was only distracting. She let out a frustrated breath, pushing the inner life back into her chest, then inhaled as she focused on bringing it back to her mind once more. Uthrin had said that the feeling was different for everyone. He described his own trigger like a slight chill that slowly ran up his spine. Silas's had been much easier to recognize, like he felt his entire body being energized. Her feeling was proving to be much more subtle than both of theirs, which was annoying beyond her belief. Up and down once again, she let the power of her inner life flow. She searched for the change. She searched for the change. Searched for the slightest of triggers that would tell her that she was ready to release her soul and open her second mind. Even that part didn't seem to make much sense. Release my soul? She thought. Just let it fly up, up and away. She shook her head. She knew the inner sarcasm was not going to help her. She also knew that dwelling on the fact that it came so easily to Silas was destructive. Her spirits lowered slightly at the thought. She wanted to be good at this. She needed to be good at it. The previous night had been the most terrifying night of her life. Even sitting next to Uthrin for the remainder of the night, she constantly thought she saw shadows in the trees, lurking towards her to come and snatch her up, place a knife on her throat and slice her neck. She feared that she might never get a good night's rest again. Come on, she whispered a prayer, so softly that no one could hear it. I need to do this. I have to be able to protect myself. As the prayer left her lips, a calmness greater than she had ever felt seemed to fill her chest. It wasn't anything special. No warmth or cold or strange tingling sensation. It was simply a feeling, like a knowledge that had been gently placed within her, telling her that all would be well. It was as if there was an ancestral spirit whispering into her ear, letting her know that she was being watched over. The cares of the world seemed to fade away, their meaning and significance blurred away by the peaceful calm. Without questioning the feelings, Samara imagined her soul leaving her body. The strangest sensation came over her, as if a small piece of herself that she rarely felt was slowly leaving, rising above her physical body and hovering above her. She gasped, opening her eyes as the feeling cemented itself. Upon opening her eyes, she noticed that instead of just one plane of vision, she was met with an additional view that she had never seen before, one from the perspective of a ghostly apparition floating directly above herself.
"By the light!" Uthrin exclaimed, his eyes widening. "Samara, you've done it! You've opened your second mind and connected to the light!"
Samara's heart raced with excitement. She looked to her left and with her physical eyes was able to see the surroundings that sat to her left. From her spiritual body, she saw her physical body beneath her slowly turn. She then willed her second mind to look to the right, and her ghostly eyes saw the river gently flowing beside her. She could see and perceive the sight of 2 different directions all at the same time. No way! Excited to see what the body of her second mind looked like, she turned her physical head to look behind her and at the same time tried to look down at her body with her second mind. To her surprise, she didn't see anything floating behind her. The vision of her second mind saw her physical body, look of confusion and all, staring right through her.
"Don't confuse yourself too much," Uthrin said with a chuckle. "The body of your second mind isn't visible to anyone, not even yourself."
This is... wow! I don't know how I can take all of this in at the same time. How can I look both left and right?
It's confusing at first, but with time and practice, it becomes more natural.
A notable shift came across her thoughts as she observed the world. She felt more noble and proud. She almost felt holy. Her thoughts and desires were still her own, but there was definite influence tugging at her now that seemed to want justice in all things. Light is very confident, she said, trying to come up with a word that fit her feelings correctly.
"The light is very influential. All the elements have their own pull, and a lot of times, if you are not careful, you will find that they can even influence you to do things that you wouldn't want to do. Never let the element have full reign upon your desires. The perfect balance is to bring the desires of the element to a happy medium with your own. The light is constantly wanting to banish darkness and destroy evil, but sometimes it can't recognize the good in some things. If light were able to use magic on its own, it would be completely overzealous and probably end up doing more harm than good. It's the balance that you create that makes it truly good."
The power of the light surged through her body, exhilarating her senses. "I want to try casting a healing spell, like Silas did," she said excitedly. Uthrin pulled his knife out of his pocket. He slowly unsheathed it and gently slid the blade across his hand, drawing several small beads of blood across his palm.
"Just as I instructed Silas, you must bring into alignment the desires of both your first and second minds. When they are both in unison with your end goal, place your hand over mind and will it to be done."
Silas watched as Samara concentrated on most likely the same process he'd used to convince the light within herself that she did not need to enact holy vengeance upon the knife, but just to heal what was wounded. Samara concentrated for a moment, then slowly placed her hand upon Uthrin's. Almost immediately, the glow from her hand spread into Uthrin's hand. A flash of yellow surrounded their hands, then faded. She pulled her hand away, eager to see her success. Uthrin smiled, revealing his unwounded hand.
"Very good, Samara. Now you have both successfully cast your first light spell."
"I want to learn more," she exclaimed. "Teach me something else. I don't want to close my second mind yet."
"I appreciate your enthusiasm, but before we get into any more basic spells, I want to help both you and Silas to become efficient at opening your second mind swiftly. It won't do you any good to know how to cast spells in battle if you will be overtaken while trying to focus on opening your second mind. It needs to become something that you can do in an instant, without even having to think about it."
Uthrin made the symbol of light, The very instant that his fingers completed the symbol, the brilliant yellow glow of light surged within his hands and in his eyes.
The mark of a true master is when they can enter and exit stages of magic in a moment's notice. I don't expect either of you to be this fast for quite some time, but I do expect you to become much quicker than you are now before I teach you any more spells.
Uthrin released the magic, and the light faded out of existence. With a smile, he added,
This way, you will have more motivation.
Disappointed that they were not going to learn anything new, but excited at the challenge of getting faster at opening their second minds, Samara and Silas looked at each other. Silas knew that Samara was quite competitive, as was he. The race to mastering the light was on. Torrin wiped the blood from his knife on the tall grass beside him. 3 rabbits ain't too bad if I do say so myself. He wrapped the meat he had just skinned inside of a cloth and put it inside his bag along with the fur skins. At least it'll satisfy until Geode gets back. He remembered catching a glimpse of Geode fighting off the 2 men with his staff. Grandeur thoughts of becoming the greatest swordsman alive spun through his head wildly. He could almost see himself challenging his own father to a sparring match, beating him with techniques that not even the greatest of the greats could dream of. While Samara and Silas are off learning their silly magic, I'll be learning the cool stuff. He jabbed at the air several times with his knife, stabbing his invisible opponents with grace and ease. Disappointment swirled in the edges of his mind at not even getting the first step of magic down, but he didn't let it get to him. His father was the best swordsman in Shilverst, possibly the world if his mother's stories were true, and he had a legacy to uphold. I'll be the greatest swordsman ever. No one will be able to cross blades with me and live to tell the tale. The strange technique that his father always kept a secret flashed in his mind. He'd learned it from Torrin's grandfather, someone he really wished he knew more about. So many secrets were kept in his family. Maybe once he proved to his father that he could stand toe-to-toe with him, he'd spill all the secrets. He took another swing, slicing the head off of his last imaginary opponent, and then shoved the knife into its holster. Master Torrin, they'll call me, the greatest of all time. Making sure that he wasn't leaving anything behind, Torrin turned back towards the river. With daydreams of epic battles and legendary victories, he made his way back to camp. Upon arriving, he noticed both Silas and Samara sitting with Uthrin near the riverbank. Approaching them, Torrin asked if they were still planning on packing up and heading out this evening.
I imagine that Geode will be back before dark,
Uthrin responded.
Either way, we'll probably stay one more night. He's been traveling non-stop and will need to rest.
I got some rabbits while I was hunting, Torrin said, holding up his prize. So I was just wondering if I should prepare them for travel, or if we were going to stay one more night.
Looks good,
Uthrin said with a sincere smile.
We'll have them tonight while we wait for Geode.
Happy with Uthrin's answer, Torrin jogged towards his tent to get the meat ready for cooking.
Excellent progress today,
Uthrin said, placing a fist on his chest.
Your speed has increased significantly. Rest now, and we'll await the return of Geode.
It was several hours after dark before Geode finally returned. Silas was beginning to worry that he might not come back at all. What if more of the Black Hand found him before he made it back to Shilverst? Or what if the town was being destroyed as he arrived, and he tried to help but was killed in battle? Ominous thoughts continued to peruse through his mind until Geode finally arrived. He and Uthrin talked privately for a while, after which Geode returned exhaustedly to his tent.
Shilverst is still in one piece,
Uthrin said, sitting next to them around the fire.
Preparations have been made to ensure that any attempt to attack the town will not be a surprise. You need not worry about your family's safety for the time being.
All 3 of them let out sighs of relief. The tension had been building during Uthrin and Geode's private conversation. It was hard to tell whether the fact that they had decided to discuss things privately was a good or bad sign.
However, Uthrin added, Geode and I both agree that not all is well. We believe there may be a curse upon you, Silas, something that not I nor the Council of Light could have foreseen. When you have your visions, we believe that it is a trigger that allows Melos to see where you are. There's a connection between him and you, and we think the connecting point may be the Stone of Darkness.
Silas felt the cold of the amulet in his pant pocket radiate, as though it knew that they were talking about it.
Ericorn's power was admittedly much more accomplished than we gave him credit for, which has proved to be a grave mistake. His knowledge of dark, ancient arts, and the utility of darkness is far past anything I would have guessed him to possess.
Utility? Samara asked, tightening the blanket she had wrapped around her.
A word I use to describe how useful some magic can be. Healing is not something that can be used offensively in battle, but is still very useful in practice. For example, an offensive spell that you have seen would be what Geode did, where the vines came forth from the tree and incapacitated the man who was fighting Torin. One that you have not seen him use that's much more utility-based would be something like when he talks to animals or uses divination.
He can talk to animals? Torin shouted, about falling off the tree stump he had been sitting on.
Indeed he can,
Uthrin responded with a smile.
and it's more useful than you think. An innocent squirrel or bluebird can be much greater of a spy than any human. The point is, however, that some spells are used almost exclusively for utility purposes, rather than for offensive or defensive combat. Darkness seems to give thoroughly when it comes to useful spells. It gives a lot of knowledge to those who are willing to bind themselves to it.
Uthrin shook himself.
Needless to say, I think that Arakorn and Melos must have found the Stone of Darkness a long time ago, learned many ancient secrets from it, then, for some evil purpose still unknown to me, hid the stone for safekeeping so that no one else would be able to find it.
He wasn't sure why, but a strange curiosity seemed to fill Silas, and he couldn't help but ask, "Why is darkness so useful?"
Uthrin sighed. Ultimately, the elements are only as useful or powerful as the mage that wields them. Most mages will tell you that the elements are equally balanced, some with greater power and less utility, and others with more utility than power. Others, however, truly believe that a master of darkness is the most powerful that a mage can aspire to become, without the use of combinations, that is. The amount and quality of darkness spells that have been discovered throughout the ages is mind-boggling compared to the other elements. Darkness seems to almost guide the user to new discoveries. Some of them are quite terrifying as well.
Uthrin's gaze flicked towards Silas, a mystery hidden behind his old, wise eyes. Crickets and other insects, along with the flowing river in the distance and the crackling of the campfire, provided the only competition to the silence that surrounded them until Uthrin spoke again.
I'll tell you one thing. If there is a connection between you and Melos, then there is a chance that a truly ancient evil has been awakened. Knowledge of such things is not supposed to exist. Not anymore. I hope to the light that I am wrong, that I am overreacting. Perhaps this old fool is dreaming up nightmares, but one can never be too sure when talking about Melos.
Uthrin put his hands on his knees and rose to his feet.
We've gone into more detail than I wanted to. Now, get some rest, everyone. We'll leave for Gelendor first thing in the morning.